Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. And today we are going to understand how to deal with JSON content. And when I'm talking about JSON, it stands for JavaScript Object Notation. JavaScript Object Notation. Okay. Uh, so in JavaScript object notation, I think I just spelled it out incorrectly. Notation. Okay. So in the JavaScript object notation content, basically it is very easy. Why we should actually learn JSON formatting? That is the question. And JSON is like these days when we are actually talking between applications. Let's say one application developed in .NET, other application in Java, the third application in Python. How do they talk to each other? There should be common formatting in between. In the previous years, or I can say decade ago, people are actually using XML. Okay, and then before XML, it was like EDI formatted data, electronic data interchange. Okay, EDI formatted data. Then XML came into picture. Then JSON came into picture because JSON is but most commonly used in the UI interface too. Let's say UI is developed in Angular, maybe Angular most recent version or Angular JS itself, and they can actually invoke a API, the REST API call, and get the data in the JSON format. So the JSON format is nothing but known as JavaScript object notation, and it is pretty much lightweight format for storing and transporting the data between systems or interchange the data between the application. JSON is often used to send the data from the server side. Let's say, for example, I want to call a REST API call. For example, for better understanding, Yahoo Finance API. You can explore Yahoo Finance API. It is freely available. Let's say I want to know what is the stock value of happiest mind today, right now, and programmatically I want to actually do that. So I need to talk to Yahoo Finance API. The moment I'm talking to Yahoo Finance API, I'll be getting a JSON formatted data. The response will be JSON, and some of the API endpoints do support XML formatting, some to support the legacy applications, and some of the you can see some of the APIs in real time. They will be sending only the JSON formatted data. So in that case, how do we deal with in Python programming whenever we are actually dealing with JSON content? How do we deal with it? So either we'll be having the JSON formatted files in a particular path, and then we'll be reading the content from a JSON file, or else we are going to invoke a API call, and then followed by that we are going to process the JSON formatted output based on whatever the output we are going to get it from the API, so we can actually get it. So now today we are going to learn a couple of methods and then the model. The model is like nothing but import JSON. Okay, if it is not there in your PyCharm or whatever the editor or IDE you are using, then you have to explicitly install it. Then we'll be going through example to understand what is JSON.load method, and then JSON.loads method, JSON.loads, and then similarly we do have JSON.dump, JSON.dump, and JSON.dumps. It's not 9, it's a mistake. So JSON.dumps, JSON.dumps. So these four methods should be good enough to start with, the JSON file. So now, what is JSON.load? JSON.load is used to create the JSON document. That means it can read the content from a file. Content from a file means I have a file where the data is JSON formatted. In some time, I'm going to tell you how the data looks like. Have patience till then. In the JSON dot loads, we are going to read the data from a variable. The variable contains the JSON formatted data. Real-time use cases. Let's say, for example, I have the data which is a response from certain API, but the response we are getting is formatted by string. So that is JSON data but the format what we are actually getting is actually string. Now, in that case, if you want to convert into Python dictionary, then what we need to do is we need to use JSON.loads. We'll just go through the example to understand it. Similarly, dump file is actually used to write the JSON data to a file, and JSON.dumps is used to convert a Python object that is nothing but like now maybe a dictionary to convert it to JSON string basically. Okay, so whenever it is needed to convert a data Python object like specific dictionary or something to a JSON string, we can actually use JSON.dumps. Okay, so now how the sample JSON file looks like. So ideally, whenever you are going to look at like sample JSON data, it is very easy. It's just Python dictionary only. Now here you see Python dictionary. How do we give it like the name and value pair, right? So like name equal to Subbu, location Bangalore. Then I can specify subject equals subject is Python, and name value separated by colon, and each key value separated by comma. So that is how the Python dictionary looks like. So a typical JSON file exactly same as a dictionary. Okay, so now how it looks like, let me tell you. Let's say this is a JSON formatted data. So now I'm just having like server detail. For example, for easy understanding, I'm just using like server detail file, server detail JSON file. In the server detail JSON file, I'm just going to store all my application server detail. So if I'm going to store multiple values, definitely I need a list or a tuple, but in JSON, we call it a JSON array. So now I'm just writing a typical JSON file, which will be having my server details. Let me do it like this way, okay? So now this is how my data will be looking like. So now, once I have my server details, let's say I'm just going to store my application server one details here, okay? Server one details here. Then I'm just going to store my server two details here, and uh, then I'm just going to store my server 3 details here. Okay, so now server 3 details. Now, in this case, we are having three key value pairs. Like one is server name, other one is like my application. In this case, for example, this is for the server 1, this is for server 2, or up to this is for server 3. Now, here I'm just giving server name. What is the server name? I'm just giving the server name is okay. So guys, one thing, when we are actually dealing with JSON, just make sure you use the double quotes here. Okay, so I'll just tell you like what are the difference between single quotes and double quotes in some time. So now this is s name. I'm just giving server one dot maybe test.com. Okay, and let's say this server is actually uh, for the application. I'm just going to say my application name app equals to or app colon. Here I'm just giving my app one. Now similarly, what I can do is instead of right now writing it again and again, let us copy paste this. Okay, it will be easy than spending like a good amount of time here. Okay, this is four, and then I'm just going to change it to app 3. So here we go. So it is like now app is my app 2, and here also I'm having like server 2, server 3 basically, and my app 3. And here I can specify a server 2 and then my f2. So this is how a sample JSON file looks like. JSON file, ideally it will look very complex in the real time. I have seen the responses in just one line. Just hit a service now API and see like how the JSON file looks like. You'll be like struggling to understand, like to struggling to interpret right all the data and understanding and the keys, values, and all these things. It will take some time. So I'm just going to use this sample JSON file for a better understanding in this session. So now this is all about like now how the JSON file looks like. Now, if my requirement is I want to store this data, this JSON file to a file. Okay, the content should be like now this is JSON content. I want to store this data to a JSON file. How do I do it? Let's say this is our data is ready. I'm just going to take this data. and go into my PyCharm and then creating a program here, and then we'll get started. New, let's say Python file. Here I'm just giving like a JSON file example, or I can say like an example one. Okay, we'll have a couple of examples today in JSON file. So this is my data. Now I'm just going to store this. Let us first, store it in a variable. Like data is there. Now guys, look at here. If I say print type of data, look at here, type of data. That's it. I'm having a data file, and I'm just saying like, what is this type of data file? It is saying it is a class dictionary type. It's like I told, JSON file will be like, just as dictionaries. We can convert it from string to JSON content, or like, dictionary to a JSON content. Everything is possible. So let us try to understand like how we can write this data to a file, right? To a JSON file using the JSON model. So guys, remember, if your JSON module is not there and using a PyCharm editor, go to Python packages and then search for here like JSON, and in the virtual environment here you can already install the 0, PyPy, 2, 3 files, whatever, you can see it here and then get it installed. If it is not there, by default if it is there, then no need to do anything. So how do we check it, whether it is there or not there? You can just give like an import JSON. Okay, import JSON. So if it is there, then you are not going to get any error. If it is not there, then you can definitely get error. Like the JSON module is not there, then you will be definitely getting error. So now our requirement is to write this data in JSON formatted value to a file. So now if I'm going to write to a file, the same same concept remains same. I have to open a file in the write mode. I can say wait open of what I'm just giving here sample.json, sample.json. Okay, now sample.json, it should be in the quotes because this is file name, and here I can say in the write mode, the mode is w, as I'm just giving like a JSON file descriptor JSD. Okay, so now what is next? To dump the data JSON string in this case to a file, we are using JSON.dump model, sorry, dump method. So now here I can say JSON.dump, JSON.dump, and here I can say where what we are going to dump it, where we are going to dump it. This is a file descriptor, so we are definitely going to dump to the file descriptor. I can say like JFD, but what data we need to dump, if you look at here JSON dump, it takes at least two parameters. One is the file descriptor, that is nothing but JFD here, JSON file descriptor, or you can definitely use FD and FD, which is very easy and depends on your requirement, or you can say like a JSON file JF, which is also fine. Let's say a JSON file, I can say like a JSON file and write it to the JSON file, and then what I have to write? I have to write my data. Where is my data? Data is this variable. So let us do one thing. Let us write it here. Okay. So now if I'm giving write it to the data file, look at here when we are actually going to write this, whether it is writing in the same line or writing in multiple lines. Let us look at it. Okay, now my program is done. I'm just running this program. Here some error we got, let us fix it. So what it is saying, trace back, okay, line of file, and in dump, okay, for chunk of white variables, something type or object type is text, IORF is JSON is not serializable. Okay, very pretty good. So we'll just identify what is the wrong here, what I am doing wrong here. It is the other way around. I understood it. Whenever you are getting like this error exactly, it is in the other way around. I did a mistake here. That mistake is like what we are going to write and what is your file descriptor. Then we have given file descriptor followed by the data. It is the other way around. It is what we are going to write, dump what? Dump data to what? To the JSON file. Okay, so now if I'm running this program, it is not going to give us anything. It's saying like now finished with exit code 0. That means this program executed successfully. Now if I'm going to see like what is my sample JSON file content, it is saying the data has been written. Now here you can see it is written in the same line. As I have told, like let's say app3 to understand whether it is doing the same thing. I'm just going to do sample server 4 here my f4, and then here I'm just giving like 100, and here also I'm just giving 100. Now let us run the program and see the output. Now I have just executed the program. Going here, you can see the data has been changed. It is server 100, my F100, and the last one is actually server 4, my F4. So now it is writing the same line. Now, the question is, if it is writing the same line, it is not properly readable, then how I can actually make it readable? So guys, it is very, very easy. In the JSON file, when you're actually dealing with this kind of this kind of data basically. So what we can actually do is we can definitely we can definitely like write it with proper indentation. Okay, that is also highly possible. So now if my requirement is I want to print the file content. Print the file content means I have the file, and now I want to go print the file content. How I can actually print it is very, very easy. So whenever we are actually going to print it, we can also print it, and whenever we want to write it with the proper indentation, we can also do that. Let me tell you, if I'm just printing this content here, let's say with weapon sample.json in the read mode, can simply give w plus also there, so that's fine. So now here I'm just giving like read mode. Let us get familiar with this read mode, and let us see. I'm just going to print everything. So how do we print the file content? The content is actually very, very easy, right? So if you are looking for files, we are using like file read, then read lines. To read a JSON content, you can actually give here, I want to read everything. Let's say for example data equals to jf dot read. Now let us see like what's going to happen. Now print data. Okay, now print data. If I'm running this program and printing everything, guys, look at here. It is printing everything. This is like now using just the simple file read operation. But ideally, we should not do like this. In case of JSON, we do have methods available. Just give like JSON.load. Okay, it is going to load the content from the file. Now I'm just giving like JF, and here I can say like data. We can give like data JSON.load. Now in this case, if I'm printing it, now here we go. If I'm printing it, you can also get the same data. Now the question would be, earlier also we are getting the same data, now we are getting the same data. What is the difference between jf.read and json.load? Guys, remember JSON.load, in this case JSON.load, what is the type? The type is interesting here, but in case of read, it returns a string. In this case, it is going to return as dictionary. Now here you can see dictionary, you are getting the dictionary. So parsing will be very easy. Now if I'm using the previous method, I'm just like doing a undo, and like we can actually read this way jf.read, and if I'm giving like type of data, you can see it here. Type of data is actually nothing but string. I'm just running this program. Here you can see it is class str. So it's very easy to deal with like deal with like JSON formatted value using dictionaries and all. You can parse it effectively. So don't use on the JSON files basically. Don't use the file.read method. So data equals to jf dot load. Sorry, it is json dot load, then JF, and then here I can say like print, then data. Okay, print data. Now here you can see the data. Though it looks like same, but here it is like returning a dictionary. In the previous example or previous approach, it was returning a string. So now, if I want to do it differently, let's say in this case we are writing the file and it is in one line and all. Let us write one more example. That one more example I'm just going to tell you here, like Python file, a JSON file example 2. Okay, Python file. Now here we go. Okay, so now in this case, let us do one thing. Let us write the data with proper indentation. So how do we write the proper indentation? Like guys, remember when we are actually writing the content, JSON file content to a file, we have like multiple methods and multiple parameters we can actually pass. So while opening the file, so while like dumping the file, basically while dumping the file to a dumping the file here, right, the JSON content to a file, we can in the dump option, it also support like what will be our indent. So I can specify the indent. Let's say I'm just specifying my indent is indent equals to 2, and instead of sample 1 I'm just giving sample 1 dot JSON, and here also I'm just giving sample 1 dot JSON. Let us see like now how it looks like. So now here I'm writing to the same data, I'm writing to sample 1.json. So now I'm just going to execute the program. Look at here, so as the program got executed, while getting the output, it is printing everything in one line. But if I really open that file to see like how it is looking like, right, sample1.json. Now in the sample1.json file, it is actually a multi-line text. It is a multi-line text. Now the question is, whenever I have a pretty format, we call it as still pretty format. Formatting means it looks pretty, right? In this case, it is very easy to understand. So that is the known as pretty formatting using the indentation. Now, if I'm not specifying the indentation and doing like JSON that load and not prettifying it, then in this case it is not able to like print the data as is. I'll tell you like how to deal with that, so no need to worry how to prettify the JSON load content. You can do that. Also we can also do like this way. Let's say jf.read. If I'm giving okay, I can actually directly write it in this way, like not to prettify it without using any other method. I can actually give like this line in jf. Okay, for line in JF, then print line. If I'm giving this, now let us look at it. But this is not a recommended way. Okay, this will be printing the data. Okay, if I'm giving like end equals to nothing. Now if I'm running the program, right? So here you can see this is a pretty print. This is a pretty print, but this is not a suggested way of doing it, because we do have efficient ways like how to read the data in the uh, in a pretty format. Okay, so I'll just tell you that in some time. So this is how the indent works. What if you are going to give like something like -1, the same sample registration, let us say like -1. When I'm running this with -1, -2, -100 or anything, it will be just writing the data like this, and there is no indentation given. See here, -1 is nothing but zero indent, but it is actually writing in multiple line. What if I'm just giving like indent as 10? Now let us see like how the data will be looking like here. Now here you can see the indent as 10, so it is giving like 10 spaces and all, right? So if I'm giving okay indent as just 2, and running this program. So now here you can go ahead, see the indent is actually 2 spaces. So exactly 2 spaces here you can see. You can also, like if you're using IDs like this, you can also like understand the data like in a pretty good format. Let's say your requirement is you want to know like what is the test for data, just expand test for. Expand test for, you can see okay this is the test for data. So this is how we can actually deal with the JSON file content like in a pretty format, like using indentation. But ideally in the Python we are using like four spaces. So stick to four or two based on your use case. You can actually go ahead change this indentation. So that is JSON.temp. These are the very basic options. There are many, even I don't know like all of them. So it is based on use cases. We'll be using it and like remembering the things for our real requirements. Okay, so that's all about how we can read the data and write the data, okay, in the creative format. So now just take this example. I want to actually extend this because here we are actually using a line in JF, right, which is not recommended. I'm just telling, like while I told like this is not a recommended way. So now let me do one thing. I'm just writing a Python file here and writing like JSON file example 3, and we'll do a read operation on this particular file. Let's say sample read file sample.1. We are going to read it in the creative formatting. So now here we go with open sample.json, sample1.json as JF. If I'm going to print, let's say I'm just going to print the data using json.load. Okay, now I'm just giving data equals to json.load. JSON.load is going to load the content from the file descriptor. Now here it is like JS. If I'm giving here like print of data, in this case it is going to print everything in one line. It is going to print everything in one line. Just look at here. It is printing everything in one line. So now the question is, if it is printing everything in one line, how do I prettify it? How do I prettify it? So to, let's say, to prettify it, I'm just going to give like the p data. This is pretty data, or you can uh, type like a pretty data or p data or pp pretty anything you can actually use. Okay, let's say JSON dot. I'm just giving here dumps. JSON dot dumps. I'm just saying here. See here. This is JSON dot dumps the content to a file. JSON dot dumps can help us to prettify the data. There are various edge cases. Let us use prettifying, like let us prettify the data using JSON.dumps method here. Now here I am having data which is like in having a JSON string basically or JSON document. Now I'm just telling, okay, that's fine. Now use the indent equals to, I'm just giving, let's say, I don't know, like, what is the indent there. I'm just saying, like, in the file, we have, like, some indent here, like 4 spaces. But while printing it, I want to print it with 8 indentation. Now, print, if I give print p data, print data. Now, if I'm running this program, here you can see it is actually giving like 8 spaces. Now, if your requirement is okay, don't give any space, so just put a 0. Now, if I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing everything, but then it is not giving any spaces here, right? Any spaces here. That is how it works. Now here you can see server detail and everything here, right? So that's all about it. So this is like how do you. So far we are familiar with JSON.dump, JSON.load, JSON.dumps. Now the question is, sometimes we may be dealing with like particular section. Let's say I want to know what are the servers available. Let's say for example, look at this data. Okay, so now I'll just tell you guys, look at this data file. So we are having a server detail variable. This is the key. In the server detail variable we are having 3 dictionaries. Okay, 3 dictionaries, and that 3 dictionaries are having what? The first dictionary having application 1 data, second dictionary application 2 data, third dictionary application 3 application 4 data, my f4. Now I want to understand, I want to fetch the details of application 4. That means server detail, definitely server detail we are going to fetch. Let me write a program here. Python new Python file JSON file example 4. Okay, now in the example 4 I'm definitely going to copy this section, and I'll just go over here, and data equals to JSON.load. That's it. Now, if I'm going to print data, it prints everything. If I'm going to print data, it prints everything. Now, my requirement is I want to print the server 4. That means definitely I'm going to fetch what is server details. So now here I'm just going to print data of server detail, server underscore detail. Okay, so now if I'm giving like now data underscore server underscore detail, now here you can see it is actually printing the values. So it is returning as a list. Earlier it was returning a dictionary, now returning a list. Now in the list I want to print, in the list item basically I want to print the server names. Now this is my list. I want the server names. Now how do I process it? So I can specify for, let's say, server detail in the list, actually here server detail, right? Here we go. Here we go. And then print. If I'm giving, let's say, it's like this h detail will be h detail. Let's say for example in this list the first element is a dictionary. First element of server name will be definitely giving server 100. So h detail of, if I'm giving, give me the server name. That's it. Our work is done. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is printing like all the server names, like server 10, 100, server 200, server 3, server 100, server 2 and server 4. Now the question is, that's all fine. My requirement is pretty unique. I want the details of the server, like if it is server, for example, server 4, let's say server 4 is associated with my F4. I want the my F4 only. How do I do it? So now this is JSON formatted data. Guys, I'm just going like in depth little bit. So JSON file example 5 and real time, whether you are actually dealing with Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud, or like Azure or anything, you will be definitely dealing with JSON content. So try to understand the concept pretty well so that you are not going to struggle in real time. So now here we go. So now if I'm giving like this is my data, my question is, sorry, my requirement is if the server name is like 4, server 4 basically, in that case return me the application name. Let's say here I'm just giving, okay, here I'm just giving like if is detail of server name, server name equals to this one server 4. Only in this case print is detail of app name. That's it. In which server, like in server 4, what are the applications running? Let us see. Now running this program, now here it is saying something went wrong. It is saying key error is S, oh, it is server name, S name, not SANME, SNAME. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see, here it is saying my F4. Now let us go to this JSON file. Where is my JSON file? Here it is the JSON file. I'm just going to change like the server 4 also. My F100 is also running, and server 4 also. My F200 is also running. My F, sorry, my F200 is also running in the server 4. Okay, so now it's done. Now if I'm going to run this program, now let us look at like what's happening. It is saying in server 4 my F100, 200 and my F4 is running. It's very easy if you know how to process. Very difficult if you are having difficulties like how to deal with the JSON formatted data. This is a pretty simple example to understand how to read, how to parse, how to get a particular section of the JSON values and all. So this is all about like how we are actually going to deal with JSON load and then print the JSON. And then if you are actually not using with, if you're not using with, if you're using JF equals to a pen of sample JSON, then read mode, then definitely you need to do like JF.close. So that is something related to the basic file handling concepts. So you can actually do that. Okay. So now that's all about that's all about how we are going to deal with the JSON formatted values. So now sometimes we may deal with the strings, and wherever if we go ahead see it here, we do have like multiple methods here, right? So now out of this we do have JSON.dumps. In the JSON.dumps, sorry, JSON.loads, how to convert a JSON or a string to a JSON data. For example, we'll do one thing. We'll do one thing. I'll just go ahead here and then take the data. Control C and write a program here Python new file, Python file, JSON file example 6. Okay, so now here we go. This is my data. Small change I'm just going to do. And hope you remember this triple, double quotes or triple single quotes we can actually use. This is known as documentation comment. Also, we can actually use this here. Now, okay, before we proceed further any operation. Now, if I give print the data, just print the data as is. Now, if I'm running this program, it is just printing the data as is, mean the multiple lines. So now, if I say, like, what is the type of this data? The type of this data is definitely string. It is saying like in a class str. Let us look at the data. It has the same value. We have just closed it in triple quotes. Sometimes if your REST API is actually returning everything as a string, and you are dealing with this JSON content. And the question is, how do I convert it to a meaningful type? Like in this case, how do I convert the data to a JSON type, for example? Okay. Now I'm not going to disturb this. I'm just going to type this one as a string type data. Okay, string type, and then let me print it print data here. That is very simple, and I can print a differentiator line over here to understand okay, we are printing asterisk 60 times. Okay, that's all we do here. Then I'm just converting the string to a JSON formatted document. Then how do I do it? We do have JSON.load. We load the JSON data from a file. If you look at here, go to example 5, you can see JSON.load. We are reading the JSON data from a file. Now the question is, how do I read the data? How do I read the data? Where is my JSON checks? Okay, here we go. So how do I read the data from a string? So that is like JSON.loads. So JSON.loads loads the data like JSON understandable formatted data from a string. So while loading the content from a string, JSON.loads. While loading the content from a file, JSON.load. For example, I am making a call to REST API to get some data. In some time, I'm just going to give you an example. The moment you are making a call, it is very easy. You can get the response in few seconds or fraction of seconds. You are going to get the response. Now the question is, once I'm getting the response, then what is next? How do I go ahead? Let's say once I get the response, I should definitely store it in a variable. Now I have stored it in a variable. Now from the variable, I'm just going, let's say it is a string data type. Now how do I convert it to a JSON data type? You can actually use JSON.loads. Now JSON.loads, I'm just giving data. Now let us see what is the type here. Print data 1, type of data 1 basically. Type of data 1, type of data 1, okay, and followed by print data 1. So we are good here. If I'm running this program, here you can see from a look at here, guys. When it was actually string data type, it was printing as is. When we have converted it to a JSON data type using JSON.loads, it is printing the string as dictionary, and it is everything is printed in a dictionary formatted value. Then you may have a question. This looks good. This looks good, but difficult to process. This is difficult to parse. This looks like everything in one line, very easy to parse. You can actually correlate with the previous example what we have gone through, then understand how easy it is if the data is actually in the dictionary formatted, well, in the dictionary format. So now that's how we can actually go ahead, deal with the JSON type of data, using JSON dot loads. So now, if my requirement is okay, I have this data in the string format, I want to dump it using the JSON formatting. Okay, so how do I do it? Same thing we are going to do. JSON.dump we are already familiar. JSON.dumps, it does the same thing. Only thing is it is going to deal with a string type value. Now let me do it here. Python file. Now JSON file example 7, right? So Python file here. So now I'm just going to do this. So now I'm not going to print the data. If you want, definitely you can actually definitely print it, or else what we can actually do is we can, if our data is in a variable, let's say for example, I'm just going to take it out here. So this is my variable. This is all my variable here. Okay. Now if I want to store this particular variable data in a file, right? So how do I do it? So in this case, I can definitely write to a file, or we can actually definitely, for example, in this case, if I'm having one moment, guys, if I'm giving this under dumps, so one moment, I'm just going to do one thing, some modification I'm just going to do here. Let me take out this data. Okay, so now here we go. If I'm actually printing what is the type, it should actually return as dictionary type, because we have removed the documentation comment over here, right? Documentation comment here. So now let us look at here. Now if I'm running this program, here you can see it is actually printing everything in one line and the type is dictionary. Now if I want to print something like this, like in using JSON.dumps, let us convert the data using JSON.dumps. The data1 equals to JSON.dumps, JSON.dumps. So here it is, okay. JSON.dumps, you may be having question like what is the difference between loads and dumps? Loads is from string, loads is from string to a JSON formatted value, and return type is actually dictionary. Dumps is from a JSON type, like in this case, we do have JSON formatted data and the type is returning as dictionary. From dictionary to string, you can actually use JSON.dumps. That's it. That is the only difference. I'm just giving your data. Now, if I'm giving print data1, here you can see a pen, right? So it is actually printing like everything in one line. Now you can actually ask, okay, that's all fine. Now what is the type here? Type is definitely string. So string print type I need to give. I'm just missing type here. So type here. Whenever requirement is convert the JSON to string, JSON.dumps. So this is like convert dictionary to str. Okay, and one more thing I'm just giving here, json.loads, what it does, converts str to dictionary. So no confusion. Loads you are going to use when you are converting a string to dictionary. Dumps you are going to use when you are actually converting a dictionary to string. So these are the four methods. So JSON.load, JSON.loads. JSON.load, load the JSON file content from a file. JSON.loads, load from str to a dictionary type, JSON.loads. JSON.dump, dump the content to a file. JSON.dumps, it is going to convert from a dictionary type data to a string type data. So that's all about JSON.load, JSON.loads, and JSON.dump and JSON.dumps. So that's all about how we are going to deal with all this kind of data. So that's all about like the methods whatever we are actually learned so far. The final example for today, I'm just going to give you one moment. Let me close few of these programs. I think I have a, no, it is not there. I have a RESTful API details. So let me see if it's there somewhere. I'm just going to tell you one thing here. JSON. This is actually REST, or you can set request. Now here the module we are going to use import request. Again, this is actually, this should be there by default. If it is not there, you need to go ahead install it. Now here I want to do a request.get of anything. You can actually Google it. Let's say here I'm just Google it. One moment. I'm just going to incognito window, and here we go, and I can say Google REST API. I think we do have multiple websites. I don't remember right now which one is available for open use. Let me see something. We can definitely use API API dot open. I think it was Open Notify. I'm not sure about it. OpenNotify.org. Then here you can see, okay, astros.json. So now here we go. If I'm giving now astros.json, I think we can. It is it is astros.json, I believe. Notify.org. We can actually put sample learning. There are many, but yeah, I have used it some time ago. Astros.json, I believe so. Let us try this out, and if it is working. Okay, so okay. Sorry, I'm just missing here API dot opennotify.org astros.json. I think this is the correct. Yes, here we go. So now this is my JSON formatted value, and this is my REST API. Now, if I'm going to programmatically call this, how do I call it? I can say, let's say my response RSP equals to request.get, and we do have request.get, request.post. There are so many things. So if you're actually not familiar with this one, then you can just go through this example to understand the very basics. But again, this is pretty big topic, to enable RESTful endpoints and all. If time permits, I will record a session over a weekend and all, upload it. That will be a different series altogether. We can actually build our APIs and perform various operations like get, post, and all the operations basically. So once I'm done with that, then probably I can actually record it and then upload it in the channel. You can go through it. So now that's it. I've just given RSP. It's very simple, guys. At just one line code, you are invoking a API. If it is a get, your life is very smooth, doing the things here in Python. And it is just like curl command, wget command in Linux. If you're familiar with curl, curl, and wget, you can easily correlate and understand this. Okay. So now, if my data is here, let's say I'm just going to give print here. I'm just giving RSP print RSP. Now, if I'm running this code, running this program, it should actually give us the response time. It is saying response is 200. If 200 okay, that means website is up. Now, we are not looking for this is response code, HTTP response code, but we are looking for the data. Like what we can see it here, we are looking for the same data. Now, how do we do it? Now, here what we can actually do it. Let's say I can say data equals to, okay, sorry, data equals to RSP is already there. So we can say RSP, oops, RSP dot, here I can say, yeah, it is saying is it a JSON format, it's a content, Is it a text? What is that? So if I give like text actually, text, if the data is in text format, I can get it. If the data is not in text format, then data is in like binary format, then I can give content. Okay, or like it will be giving like B, sorry, byte array, not binary, it is byte array. So now it will be giving B followed by the data, and but in our case the data is actually JSON. It is enclosed in the braces, like here you can see, but it is not a predefined JSON. So now let us look at here. Now RSP, here I'm just giving my response code is this, and then data is in JSON format. Well and good. Now if I'm giving like print data, right? Here you go, run the program. Whatever is there in the website, you got the data here. Message success. People like all these guys you are actually getting. Like if I am going to print, okay, I do have like data in JSON format. Give me the keys. So if you remember, like in the dictionary keys and dictionary values, right? It is giving dictionary keys are actual message, people, and number. So now, let's say my requirement is I want to know like whatever the values are actually there in the people. So now I can see here like for that's a P in data data of people, right? Data of people. Let's say I'm just going to give like a print P. Now run the program. Here we go. So here is saying like now it is printing all the records from there, like whatever is actually available. Now, if your requirement is okay, I don't want P, I want P of name. Okay, fine. You just specify name here. That's it. It is very easy. Now give it here. You have all the data. It's very easy. So with this, we have done through like a request, all other things as I have mentioned in my previous sessions, that knowing the core concept is the key, and joining that to a meaningful program. Let's say, for example, here we are iterating dictionary, getting the keys, and all these things. It is matter of like a few minutes if you are practicing it well. But invoking a API call, dealing with API call, how many lines of code? Just 2-3 lines of code. Import the library, call the REST API with get. If it is post, the method is post here, and you need to pass the parameters and other things are actually possible. Then store the data. We do have JSON that can like we do have text. Okay, mostly we'll be dealing with JSON and text. Then if it is JSON, how do you traverse the JSON file? And to do a print, we have come to the example. Let's say question is, I want to store this data in a file. Okay, absolutely, we can actually do that. Like data is there, I can actually create here. So wait, open, I'm just giving here response dot JSON and write mode as JSON file, and then here we can say json.dump json.dump dump of what we want to dump the data, where we need to dump, not jump into a JSON file. It is very simple. Now if I am running this program, F10, data.jf is done. Now response if I'm going here, it is written everything in one line. You'll be like, oh, I cannot actually understand this, it is in one line, doesn't make any sense, so how do I do it? Then I have a solution for it. I'll just say like an indent, give for indent, and run the program again. Whatever you are having in the website and which is not pretty readable, go here, it is pretty much readable. This is what we are looking for. This is how we are actually, why we are actually learning the JSON program, JSON file. So with this, we are done for the day.